Hello, everybody. Welcome to everyone who is joining the guide to the CCA or the Cloud Capability Assessment today. My name is Fabian Elliott, the Technical Account Manager at Google Cloud, and I'm joined by a couple friends that I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Hello, my name is Stephen Tolan. I'm also a Google Cloud Tech Account Manager with over a decade of experience in working with multiple cloud providers on the GCP platform. I've worked with customers of all sizes and shapes and at various stages of migrating to the cloud. Ratchet, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Rachit Kavi. I'm also a technical account manager based in the United States, with a very similar experience of working in the industry for a bit and helping customers drive their digital transformation journey.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Rashid. Thanks, Stephen. And so, yeah, we're all on the call today because Stephen and Rashid actually presented on the Google Cloud Adoption Framework recently. And so, since it ties in so closely to the Cloud Capability Assessment, we thought, hey, why not join forces and tackle this session as well. So I'm really glad to have them, their expertise to as we walk through and answer any questions that you have about the session. So the objectives, so the goals for today, how we're going to know today is successful is that number one, helping you all to be able to learn how to use the cloud capability assessment tool to be able to find out where your organization is on the maturity scale. Also being able to help you obtain best practices and insights on how to identify the next steps in your cloud journey and how to make sure that you are walking that tight line and striking the right balance between people, process, and technology. And then also be able to hear about use cases and examples of other customers who have utilized our adoption framework and our cloud capabilities assessment. And so I'm really excited for this session today because I think this is one of GCP's best kept secrets and a tool that is, in my honest opinion, underutilized by a lot of our customers. And so you all get some inside game on how to make it work for you all. And so the agenda that we're going to flow through to hit all those objectives are just starting off with just some background context around why this matters so much in the overall digital transformation journey for your business. We're going to do an overview on the cloud capability assessment, what it is, how it works, what are some of the elements of it. We're going to talk through some examples of what the assessment actually looks like in practice. So take you under the hood, looking at example questions, outputs, all those type of things, as well as highlighting some customer stories of using it. And then we'll wrap up with some of the delivery best practices that we've learned in the field, and then have an open Q&A session. And although the Q&A is listed as the last part of the agenda, feel free, and I'd encourage any questions that come up as we go through the content to please type it into the chat so we can see it and address it. I know for me that'll make the presentation a lot more fun as well, is having some of that live engagement as we're going. All right, so let's jump into it. So there's a myriad of different reasons why companies move to the public cloud and look to take advantage of the cloud. It can be wanting to be more agile and innovative and faster time to market. It could be scalability, looking to cut costs, wanting to get out of the business of having to run on-prem data centers and focus on the core business, or to be able to really get on the cutting edge of ML, AI, and other emerging technologies. So there's so many different reasons. However, they all come down to digital transformation and creating digital value for your business, and essentially being able to leverage technology to maximize your business's potential is what all these things, in my opinion, all lead into and bump up against each other when it comes to that. And so that's a lofty goal and a goal that many companies aspire to, but The harsh reality is that digital transformation is hard. It's very hard, matter of fact. And most digital transformations actually fail. So depending on what study you're looking at, you'll see it ranging from either 70% to as high as 85% of digital transformations fail. And digital transformations in this sense is, a company setting out on a journey to leverage technology to really impact their business. And a failure really means is that it didn't go according to plan, whatever targets or objectives they set, they were missed, and it didn't meet their expectations. And so one of my favorite books, Why Digital Transformations Fail by Tony Saldana, he's a former Procter & Gamble IT executive and author of the book, is that the main reason why a lot of these digital transformations fail is that there's just a lack of sufficient discipline and rigor in not only completing the transformation, but realizing that the transformation is always an ongoing process and being able to stay ahead of that. And so I always like to highlight this because I feel that a lot of our customers are not fully aware of it's a journey, but also the battle, the experience that they're embarking on in their cloud journey. And that with these stats, you need to be doing whatever you can to turn the tide in your favor and taking advantage of everything possible to make sure that you don't end up in this 70 to 85 percentile of having a failure for your business. And just like there's a lot of reasons why companies move to the cloud and pursue a digital transformation journey, there's a lot of challenges along the way that feed into those failures. So operational silos across the enterprise, which is really plagues, especially very large companies. Resistance to change, so change management is a big issue a lot of times. Security and compliance. Let's not even get started on that one, on how the landmines that you sometimes have to navigate and how it can just strangle an initiative to death. Also, just a lot of times personnel. So having the right skills, having the right mindset, and then just clear direction and collaboration between the business leaders and then IT leaders. So there's so many challenges that happen along the way. And that's why it makes tools like the Google Cloud Adoption Framework, tools like the Cloud Capability Assessment that we're going to talk about today, in my opinion, vital. If you don't want to end up with a failed digital transformation initiative, then these are the type of tools that's important to grab onto to help you. So now that we've kind of laid the landscape that most of us on this call, our businesses want to do some type of digital transformation, and that digital transformations are really hard, and that CCA can be the knight in shining armor to help protect that. Let's talk about what the CCA is and go through, start on that journey of some information. So I want to spend just a minute or two for anyone who wasn't able to make the Google Cloud Adoption Framework session on just setting the stage, because our cloud capability assessment is built on top of the Google Cloud Adoption Framework. So the Google Cloud Adoption Framework is really the ideology, the best practices, all of those things. And the cloud capability assessment operationalizes that framework and makes it actionable for your business. And so the Google Cloud Adoption Framework cascades across technology, people, and process, and really focuses on being ready across four main components. So learning, leading and leadership, scale, and then being secure. And for those four different areas, there's a maturity scale ranging from tactical to strategic to transformational. And so for each one of those four areas, there's benchmarking, there's an assessment of where you're at in that particular area on that cloud maturity scale. So this really lays the framework for then being able to take the framework and evaluate it against how your company is operating and being able to then determine the best direction forward to pursue a successful digital transformation initiative. So the cloud capability assessment then allows you to be able to then score. So this is just, an example of where a company could fall as far on learn, lead, scale, and secure across those three areas of tactical, strategic, and transform. Oh, so we got a question. Okay, let's pause and check this out from Dave. Any recommendations to help manage up and have conversations with leadership about the importance of certain tech and digital transformation changes? Yeah, so I think how it really works, and managing up, it depends on the level you're going to be managing it up. But what I've found is, typically every business has some type of ambition and some type of growth strategy and plan to meet that ambition. And typically where the disconnect is being able to tie in and how technology, how digital transformation initiatives help them achieve what they're wanting to achieve, what's already in place. When it looks disjointed, of like you're just bringing in this new shiny technology and it's not clear how it fits in or how it's going to drive their key metrics or what they're looking to accomplish, then it becomes a lot easier to reject or to not get on board. But when you can come to them and say, I'm aware that we're trying to accomplish these three main things this year. I think this technology can fit in this way and help us either accelerate it or amplify it or, make it even more successful. Then, that goes a long way in my experience. I'll pause if Stephen and Rashid, if you all have anything else you want to add. If not, we'll proceed. But that's a great question, Dave, and it can be very tough to do.
Yeah, just adding to what Fabian described as well. Yeah, so finding what their goals are, figuring out what motivates them, and then weaving in your goals into them. So basically show that by doing this, they can achieve, like at Google, we have OKRs. This is the outcome you're trying to achieve. This is the metric, this goal. This is how we can get there by using this technology or implementing this type of framework. So adopting the cloud can be many things for many customers, but it's understanding the goals and then applying how you get there by using this type of framework in order to understand it, make it measurable, make it quantifiable, and then execute it on an iterative way is the best way to communicate and to influence them as well. Roger, anything from you as well?
I mean, spot on. Being able to relate to the business objectives that helps drive the conversation on establishing the value of the digital transformation or the cloud transformation. That's super key. Another thing I've seen in my experience is being able to also show the value or demonstrate the value in reality. Whether it's being able to do some POCs and small scale, let's say, you building an app on a cloud and being able to demonstrate, number one, how easy it is, number two, how secure it is, and number three, being again able to tie it back to some of the business objectives beyond just the beyond just a dialogue, helps realize the value of the transformation through these these POCs and maybe even small scale engagements.
Awesome, thanks, guys. Yeah, the last thing I would just, the cherry on top too is, especially if it's a traditional enterprise. I know a lot of times, you either use the stick or the carrot. And a lot of times what we just described is more the carrot, but from a stick perspective is either be disrupted by these technologies or adopt them and do some of the disrupting yourself is another thing that, especially for traditional enterprises and folks that might have trouble, understanding the value of technology, that kind of fear-based motivation of being disrupted can sometimes also inspire, a different perspective as well. Okay, cool. So getting back to the cloud capability assessment, what I want to call out before I get too deep into it is that at a high level, there's two different delivery options. So there's a hands-on Google-led delivery option for cloud capability assessments, and then there's an online self-service option. And the main difference is for the hands-on Google-led delivery, there's more questions, and it's delivered, either via a technical account manager like myself, Stephen and Rashid, or Google Professional Services. And it's typically for our larger customers spending at a specific threshold. For the online self-service, that's open for anybody. And so it's brief, it has fewer questions, it's an automated process just through an online portal. And it's typically just for, like I say, either smaller customers or anyone that's interested in running the assessment. So I'll be going into more detail on the hands-on Google-led delivery, but there's a lot of still synergies and a lot of things that transfer between both on how to run them successfully. Okay, so what exactly is the cloud capability assessment? So we've already hinted or touched on just lightly of the questionnaire piece. So it's an assessment tool with questions that then, based on inputs to those questions, form an analysis to be able to then guide you on how to better pursue your cloud journey. And so typically it's the assessment tool, and then there's engagement, discussions, workshops on the analysis and findings that lead to a clear-cut action plan on how to move forward and how to put everything to work for your business. So, some of the key benefits and how I want to frame all of this is I'm going to keep coming back to that failure rate, because to me, I just think that's very important, because if you can almost look at a failure rate, almost such a high failure rate, similar to, say, a low acceptance rate at a prestigious university. So if you were trying to apply to Harvard or Stanford or any super elite university that has very low acceptance rates, that means there's a very high failure rate of not getting accepted, and you will put your best foot forward, leverage whatever resources you have, and really take it seriously. And so I think that's another way to look at this digital transformation journey, and really finding ways to de-risk and improve your odds of being successful. And so some of the benefits that come out of running the cloud capability assessment is, if you don't already have a cloud vision and roadmap, this process will help you to define that, get it going, and help start guiding your direction. The second point I really like is identifying your gaps and then remediation strategies. A lot of customers just don't know what they don't know, as far as what are the best practices for running in the cloud, what are the best practices for Google Cloud, and then more importantly, how do I size up? Where are the gaps where I'm lacking as far as adopting best practices? And so I've found that to be really helpful for customers, that even if they do have a pretty high level of confidence of how they're approaching it, they just don't know what they don't know. Everyone has blind spots. Also, it allows you to be able to take that larger organizational strategy we talked about earlier and figure out how you can align it with cloud capabilities to support that strategy, and then also accelerate the digital transformations, because each one of those 4 pillars, learn, lead, secure, and scale, if you're lagging behind too far in one of them, even if it's not immediate, eventually it's going to catch up to you and slow down the digital transformation that you're looking to achieve. And then also, the cloud capability assessment works for both hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So there's no just only GCP or only certain scenarios from on-prem to cloud, or that it will work for. So it'll work for any type of situation you can really think of, from on-prem to multi-cloud environments. So let's go into some of the examples, because even still talking about the cloud capability assessment, I found that when I'm speaking with customers, and going through the process with them, really lifting up the hood and getting into like specific examples helps for it to land a bit more deeply and succinctly. So I want to start off with just going through a few of sample questions that would be a part of the intake and the questions that will be answered in the assessment. And so I picked one question from each of the 4 pillars and gave an example of what a tactical response to that question would look like and what a transformational response to a question would look like. So we'll start with learning. So third-party reliance is a really important part of the framework that we evaluate in the assessment, because there's a spectrum of where, you know, reliance on a third party can help boost your business, to then over reliance on a third party can be a risk. And so this question is, to what extent are third parties used in the development and support of the organization's cloud initiatives? So basically, how reliant are you on third parties helping you to operate in the cloud? And so an example of a tactical response to this question would be, you're totally dependent on third party technical resources to operate in the cloud. So they're relied on to deliver all of your cloud work. These parties, these different technical resources from outside your company have the keys to the kingdom. So they have full access to your entire cloud account, and you're highly dependent on them. Versus a transformational state when it comes to third-party reliance is that third parties are not used. They're not used at all, or they serve as staff augmentation only. So for example, if there's a big project and you just need a few extra developers just to bang out some code and get things into production and get it shipped out, then you'd bring in a third party. And so that's the difference between tactical and transformational when it comes to that particular area in Learn. And so one thing is that each one of the 4 main buckets, there's several different subcategories that are assessed and evaluated in each one. So going on to lead, so leadership alignment. This is not only one of the most critical areas when it comes to digital transformation, but also it can be one of the most frustrating ones. And so this question asks, how aligned are business and IT leadership on the overall cloud strategy? And so an organization that's at a tactical state for leadership alignment, it's really simple. Business and IT leadership are not aligned on strategic directions. There's not a business plan that's mapped to technical projects and everything's in sync and flowing. There's either limited collaboration or no defined way to measure and be clear on what the cloud strategy is, versus a transformational stance when it comes to leadership alignment is that there's strong alignment between business and IT about the strategic directions for cloud, so key cloud decisions and the cloud roadmap, and how it can support the business. And there's governance and meetings and all these other things to support that. For scale, one of the areas is compute fit for purpose. And, that is, what is your approach to use compute services in the cloud? So tactical is, nothing's optimized. It's meat and potatoes, same approach for every workload. They're always deployed in long running VMs, versus more of a fit for purpose. So selecting the cloud services based on what the function is or the purposes of the workload, and making sure that the proper compute services are leveraged for that. And then for secure and access management, how do you think about network architecture for security? And so a tactical response there would be, reliance is pretty much dependent on the network to just have a perimeter around all your data and all your apps, versus transformational, where there's little to no reliance on the network perimeter, and that access controls are created around individual devices and users. So it's a much more granular protection. So this is an example. This just gives you a flavor of how in depth these questions go and how relevant and impactful some of these things are, and how there can be blind spots, or either blind spots or just not the adequate amount of attention applied to some of these areas when you're operating in the cloud. So when you've answered those questions, then there's different outcomes and deliverables where we'll be able to then see, okay, based on the responses, where are some of the bigger holes and gaps, and then be able to produce a report or an executive summary on what's happening there. So these are examples for going through the Google delivered cloud capability assessment. And if you were to go the self-service route through the online portal, then you'd get similar feedback. You'd get a score sent to your email with different insights on how you fit, along with very clear recommendations. So this is for the learn pillar, and recommendations on how to go from tactical to strategic. So some examples on what this could look like. So for example, the topic of training resources. So what's reflected in that score of 1.5 is that there aren't formally training resources really pushed within the organization, and it's up for individuals and managers, funded by their budgets. So the recommendation to up level there is to continue to just show up more, provide more on-demand, instructor-led, peer-to-peer options, proactive learning resources, having tech talks, hackathons, and just really having, a vibrant culture of learning. The second topic that there's room for improvement on in this example is having a training plan. And so this score reflects that there are no formal training goals that have been identified or targets that have been defined. And so one of the key recommendations that we always put forward as a best practice, and that your technical account manager can help you with, is creating a training plan that is either by project or by team, and that goes into detail about the type of skills that are needed for the individuals that are critical to your cloud journey. Similar for cloud certifications. So with that type of score at the tactical level, certifications are supported just at managerial discretion, or if they're requested by the employee. However, the best practice would be to be more proactive in this space, encouraging individuals to self-assess towards targets and goals, and then to be tracking and celebrating cloud certifications and individual achievements in that space. And then lastly, for some of the recommendation examples in the strategic partnership area. So a tactical score in that space would be that some of your external vendors and partners are engaged to help and supplement internal resources to accelerate cloud readiness and adoption, and that maybe there's been a gap analysis that's been conducted against that. However, the best practice really with strategic partnerships is to take it up to more of a strategic level of driving innovation, and not necessarily super tactical, and having a partner that can help you think strategically about what we talked about, of aligning those business objectives against technical objectives and services, and being able to unlock those. Next, this is an example of once you've looked through all the recommendations, you've gotten your scoring back. The big thing now is being able to then phase out what you want to tackle and when. And this is a really important step, that if it's missed, then the report will just all the recommendations will just collect digital dust somewhere, unless there's a solid action plan that's put together. So typically when we're working with a customer, we try to phase it out. Maybe phase 1 is a quarter or two, and then there's a phase 2, and then there's a longer term phase 3. And this helps with, being able to prioritize the highest priority items and the most urgent items, and then not lose track of some of the items that are important, but they're just not as urgent and they can be tackled later. So, for example, with phase one, based on some of the feedback, okay, we really need to make a training plan. Like, we need to get on that ASAP. A lot of times, some of our customers aren't taking advantage of, say, committed use discounts, which we call CUDs. And so normally that can be an urgent thing as well, or to get more upskilled on billing and how to understand their billing. So there's a lot of different avenues that can happen from that perspective. Now let's get into some of the in the field kind of customer examples and stories. So these are a couple that I picked from customers that I've worked with personally. So working with a large retailer, they had a couple challenges. So one, the customer was actually heeding the advice that we've been talking about, that digital transformations are risky, and they wanted to make sure that they were doing everything by the book and putting themselves in the best position to succeed. So they wanted to ensure they were following all the best practices on their cloud journey. And the account team, we were struggling to assist a bit because, like I mentioned earlier, customers don't know what they don't know. There's blind spots. And then trying to just engage without a validated framework, you can really be boiling the ocean, and it's not effective or efficient. So those are some of the challenges. And so we went through the cloud capability assessment with them, and we got some positive feedback, and we're able to kick off some new work streams. So the CIO, which he's a hard person to impress, but he was a bit skeptical. But then after it was said and done, he felt like it was a good use of his team's time, and they were able to surface some things that would help to drive the partnership further. And one of the executives on his team, she was just blown away that, like, hey, just even the awareness of the framework, and then even just the overview portion really helped to influence her thinking. And was like, there were things that they hadn't taken that type of structured perspective to really think about their business and their cloud journey. And so she was sold just from the overview and just how the framework worked, let alone from all the recommendations and things that came out of it. And so some of the new work streams we were able to pursue with them as follow-ups immediately was helping to engage more on their DevOps and SRE practices, helping them to think about what a cloud center of excellence could look like for them, then helping them with cost optimization, and then taking a step back to think about their innovation partnership, because they look to Google as their sole innovation partner, but really rethinking on what type of other parties need to be involved for them in that space as well. So that was one example with a large retailer. Now I wanted to highlight this in contrast, because a large retailer, it's more of a traditional enterprise, but we can't forget about the digital natives that are on their cloud journey as well. So working with a travel IT digital native, their challenge was that they were coming over from another cloud provider. They were relatively new to GCP, and similarly, they wanted to just align with comprehensive best practices. They wanted to put their best foot forward. They wanted to make sure they were just maximizing everything that GCP had to offer. But the challenge is that, as we all know, digital native companies typically have very different operating models from traditional enterprises when it comes to governance. Like, there's probably very little to none governance and all the different layers that you'll see in a traditional enterprise, cost controls, personnel, like just the whole way they operate the business. It can be a lot different. However, they still saw value in going through the process, because even though, and this was from the head of engineering that helped lead it, even though some of the best practices didn't necessarily align with their operating model, they really appreciated just having that greater awareness of what is out there, and then being able to kind of pick and choose what did make sense for them and to incorporate in their efforts. So some of the work streams we kicked off with them after it was, also engaging with DevOps and SRE, which is always a hot topic with our customers, helping them with cost optimization, taking a deep dive on GKE and how they can optimize there, and then a security assessment. So we've talked about how high the stakes are and how necessary it is to really invest and be serious about raising your chance of success in the digital transformation. We talked about the cloud capability assessment, the examples and things of that nature. And now we're going to talk just a little bit about actual delivery best practices when you're going through the assessment process to make sure that you come out on the other side in the best shape possible to really maximize all the benefits from the cloud capability assessment. So just to start off, when you're working with a Google-led engagement to do a cloud capability assessment, there's multiple different intake options, and it kind of just depends on the flavor that works best for you. So the survey can be completed just offline, and this is typically a good option if it's very difficult to get all the necessary stakeholders together. However, it's critical that there's enough accountability and trust that folks will complete it independently offline on their own. The second intake option is doing a survey direct, but live. So this is a good option where you pretty much book time on the calendar with all the key stakeholders. You all get on the call, and everyone just goes heads down and completes the survey during that time frame. So this is a good option if you're honest with yourself, you're honest with your team, and you know that no one will complete it on their own if you just send them a link. So booking the time on the calendar can typically be really helpful. And then another intake option is to get everyone together live. And instead of having them complete the survey, you go through each question and just have a live discussion about it and reach a consensus on what the score is. So this can be really good for relationship building. And then you also get consensus on each of the responses versus when you're doing a survey, it can vary quite a bit from different perspectives on where a score is on a particular area. So common mistakes and best practices that I've seen with customers on their CCA journey. So one is either a lack of executive sponsorship or an inclusion of key stakeholders. And this is a big problem because when there's no executive sponsor in and engaged from the beginning, when you come out on the other side with all the recommendations and things of that nature, it is nearly impossible or very difficult for any of those projects to move, especially or recommendations to move or be adopted, especially if they require significant resources. So that's why it's so important to just ahead of time have that executive sponsor, and that's a key best practice. And then to really carefully select key stakeholders. So sometimes what can happen is either certain key stakeholders are missing, and then you lose valuable perspective in the assessment, or sometimes you could even bring in an unnecessary stakeholder that's maybe disruptive to the process. So it's really important to think about who those key stakeholders are going to be for the assessment, and it's really a lot of times whoever are some of the key thought leaders or contributors currently in either your Google Cloud environment or your relevant either multi-cloud or on-premise environment typically. Another common mistake is folks can sometimes think about this as a pass or fail, or a bad score means we're doing bad and they're going to get in trouble. So sometimes customers can stress out about getting a potential low score, and they'll provide inaccurate answers. So if they are in reality a 1, they might answer a 3 or 4 just to avoid looking bad, thinking they're going to look bad in front of their boss or get a bad score. So, best practice there is it's really important that everyone just is honest as they can be on the submissions, so then you can get an accurate picture of your current state. And I think that's where the executive sponsor and others come in, where they can provide that psychological safety that, hey team, this isn't, no one's going to get fired based on, a poor score or according to Google best practices. But we really just want to get a clear, accurate picture of where we stand, so that we can then, move forward and proceed accordingly. And so that's another place where the executive sponsor can come in and really kind of give some peace there. Another common mistake is just biting off more than they can chew, overestimating the amount of follow-up initiatives that they can actually pursue. So it's really important that everyone who's taking this assessment, they have a full-time job, they're already really busy with whatever they're doing. And so we really have to carefully assess and prioritize to ensure that whatever, recommendations come out on the other side, that which ones you can pursue and when, and just be honest about that. And then lastly, one of the common mistakes is just completing the assessment and then drum roll doing nothing. So to make it actionable, it's really important that when you're looking at the recommendations that come out of it, focus on which ones are going to have the highest impact, and then immediately assign initiative owners. And that's really helpful for then, if you're working with Google, with the Google team on this, for us to then have a point of contact to really engage and help to drive next steps. So it becomes really important. So to recap, a lot of common mistakes are not having the right people involved, overly stressing about getting a bad score, and then not prioritizing and focusing on making everything action oriented to move forward. So just to wrap up, my call to action, and what I really want to encourage everyone to focus on, is that if you're on a digital transformation journey, that you realize what's at stake, you realize all the different challenges, and that it's literally a landmine that you're navigating to get to the other side. And this can serve as a helpful map to help you identify those landmines and avoid stepping on them and disrupting your project. And the Cloud Capability Assessment tool was designed just for that. So if you're not using it, even if structure and all these other things can sometimes feel like a burden, or it lacks progress, I guarantee that the Cloud Capability Assessment and going through it will be worth the investment that you put in. That whatever investment you put into completing it, you'll definitely get a nice return on it, in terms of either surfacing blind spots and issues you weren't aware of, or helping you to really highlight what's going to be critical and where you want to place your bets. So we'll move on now to to the Q&A session. So we have a few questions that we've received already that we can talk through on a few slides, and feel free to continue to post any questions you have in the chat. Steve, I saw you came off mute. Did you want to, was this your question here?
I think might be Ratchet's.
Oh, Ratchet, okay.
Sure, yeah, I can take this. So the question is, Google Cloud has the Google Cloud Adoption Framework, which is similar to yours, but does Google Cloud have a well-architected review process and assets, slides, training, etc., as I have a number of customers who are interested in this? Thank you for the question. And yes, we do have the Google Cloud Architecture Framework, where we share and recommend a set of canonical best practices for building and operating workloads that are secure, efficient, resilient, high-performing, and cost-effective. It could be a bit of a tongue twister. We've got the Google Cloud Adoption Framework, which is more a framework that helps establish, determine your maturity in the cloud, and leveraging tools like Cloud Capability Assessment to understand where you are and where you want to be. But then, yes, we also have the Google Cloud Architecture Framework, where we provide architecture best practices. And because the question touches upon it, I'll spend maybe another few seconds to talk about what the architecture framework is. The architecture framework is organized into 6 pillars. Number 1 is system design, to help build the foundational architecture, interfaces, and data to meet your overall system requirements. The second pillar is operational excellence, for efficiently deploying, operating, and managing your workloads. Pillar number 3 is security, privacy, and compliance, to help maximize the security of your environment, design for privacy, and help comply with the various regulatory requirements. The fourth pillar of the architecture framework is reliability, to help build resiliency to meet with your availability requirements and your product SLAs and SLOs. The fifth pillar is cost optimization, to help maximize the business value of investment. And the sixth pillar is performance optimization, to design and optimize the performance of your workloads. Now, in addition to the framework can also be supplemented by specific industry solutions and best practices, such as those for financial services or healthcare, where there are more nuanced regulatory requirements. Also, reach out to your account team if you're interested in learning more and running an architecture assessment, for your workloads or for your customers.
Good, thanks, Rashid. Okay, so we'll go to another common question: is how is the Google Cloud Adoption Framework and cloud capability assessment different from those of other cloud providers? And so what it really comes down to is all the major cloud providers, they have their own perspective and flavor on how a cloud adoption framework should look, but and the being able to assess that. However, when you look at it, you'll probably see a lot of common and overlapping themes. Our framework and assessment is based on Google's personal experience of innovating and working, in the cloud and working across thousands of different customers. So that's kind of what informs how we approach things. And the good thing is that this capability assessment, it's technology agnostic. So, it can be used to assess just cloud capabilities in general, no matter what provider you're deciding to work with. So, but it's a helpful tool for assessing that, and then just makes it even easier for us to help you and to help you on your journey with GCP as well. For the next question, so what metrics are the most important for us to track when it comes to measuring the ROI on our cloud investment? Yeah, this is becoming a prickly topic these days, because if you're following the news and different articles, you'll see different headlines about some companies that are deciding they were on-prem, they went to the public cloud, now they're deciding to go back on-prem. So there's a lot of dialogue, happening. And how we really think about it is, it depends on if you're looking at just, total cost of ownership, and there's a lot of different factors to consider. So we always encourage to really focus on value. So are you getting increased in efficiency, employer productivity, customer satisfaction, impactful innovation? Some of those things that aren't always gonna show up on the balance sheet when you're looking at different things. So it can be a bit challenging, but it's up to every organization to really think about what your reason is for going into the cloud, what you're looking to accomplish, and then being able to track, decide on what metrics best reflect those. So there's general metrics and best practice you can pick off the shelf, but it's really important to really interrogate what your particular objectives are for your enterprise and make sure you're measuring the right things for that. We'll go to the next question. And I think this is Steven.
Yep,
Do you
I can
want to
take
jump
those
in on
ones.
this one?
Yeah. How does the adoption framework differ if you're just getting started with GCP from on-premises compared to migrating from another cloud provider? Or if you're using a combination of on-premise and multiple cloud providers? Actually, so this is a great question. The nice thing about the Google Cloud Adoption Framework is actually it can be applied in all use cases. And as described before, it's technology and also vendor agnostic. And so the capabilities in the assessment part would probably pretty much still be relevant here, even in a hybrid environment. The difference would mainly be in the outcome of the assessments that Fabian was going over earlier. So if you're in the early stages of migrating to the cloud from on-prem, you probably will see most of your capabilities in the tactical maturity level. But if you're moving from another cloud provider, say to GCP, it is possible that you already have some of these strategic or even possibly transformational level maturity levels as well. But this is not to say this is always the case. Actually, an organization running on-prem could still be operating at a very high maturity level using many of the transformational level capabilities. This would be things like operating infrastructure as code, doing continuous deployments or CI/CD, and also other mature processes that we have outlined. Another example I can actually think of from a past customer is one who was migrating from another cloud provider actually to GCP. They had built out their application and workload based on the other cloud providers' infrastructure offerings. While there is parity between features across major cloud providers, there are also some differences in how the technology is actually implemented. This customer performed a lift and shift into GCP. Soon after, they realized they could potentially lock even more scalability at a lower cost if they were able to re-architect their infrastructure differently and make things simpler by leveraging some of the GCP native infrastructure services we have available today. In this case, they thought they were already between the strategic and transformational maturity level on the other cloud, but this was not the case when they came to GCP. By changing their infrastructure design, they were able to achieve a true transformational maturity level that they actually could not have achieved on the other cloud provider. So essentially they say is, it really just depends upon what you're already doing today. And if you're already on another cloud provider, it's probably most likely you'll have some strategic, if not some transformational maturity levels already in play today. But it really just depends on what you have in process today, using the GCAF framework and the CCA questionnaire as your guide to kind of firmly measure where you're at and provide your roadmap for moving forward. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So we'll go to a next question of when do you need to call in the cavalry? When should you consider using a partner to help? And how do you know what's out of your scope or what your team can manage on your own? And this is pretty simple. Like if you're just getting started early on your cloud journey, then you should always be getting some help, and whether it's from Google or a third-party partner, and it really is even more critical if either you don't have the in-house expertise or experience, and so you need to augment it, or if you do have some of the experience, but you don't have enough hands on keyboard, to help you, then that's when a partner can be really helpful. So bringing the expertise that you might lack, but then also bringing the extra personnel that you might need as well. So it's a good step to take. It's something to really consider seriously. And just as we talked about in some of the example questions, though, third-party reliance training is always super important. So just bringing in a partner to help you can be a band-aid for your overall cloud journey. So even if you do bring in a partner, it's really important to also make sure you're up-leveling, upskilling your team as well, so that you won't be completely dependent on the partner, and you can kind of find your flow and being able to steer your course. So that was the last question that we had. I don't see any other questions in the comment section at the moment. So I think we are pretty good to wrap. Stephen, Rashid, I don't know, do you all have anything else any closing thoughts?
Just thank you for joining our session today. We'll be having more TAM-led webinars coming up on our website. I think you can list them all here, and some are listed as well. If the Google Cloud Adoption Framework definitely read the white paper, review the 2 recordings that we had for this one and one before as well. If you have access to GCP account team, definitely reach out to them. They can guide you through all this process, especially if you have premium support with Tech Account Manager. They can do a very proactive session with you to kind of help guide you through this from start to finish. Other than that, we are always here to help you guys out and whatever your cloud journey may be. Ratchet, any other closing comments?
No, I think I covered it all. Again, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See ya.
Bye, everybody.